Good deal. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. This talk is actually part of the Mental Health Hackers Village. So if you haven't had a chance, go up to the second floor, say hello to them. Effectively, I want to talk today about some strategies for having a good career, having a good life, and that we talk a lot about that, right? Oh, I'm burned out. I'm not feeling good. Okay, good. Well, exercise, drink some water. You're fine. But what happens if you continue to burn out? What happens if you've got a career a little bit longer than most? How can you survive and make sure that you're headed in the right direction? Those are some of the things I want to explore today. As I already mentioned, my name is Wolf Goerlich. I am an advisory CISO with Duo. And a lot of this comes out of some of the work I've done in the community. I've co-founded the Converge conference out in the States. I ran in the B-Sides Detroit for many, many years. This was the first year I didn't run it. It felt really weird. I kept trying to tell people what to do and realizing I could just relax. And it was great. Started a couple different communities like the OWASP chapter, CSA. We tried a chapter of that behind the MySec group. And this is one of the things I'm really proud of. A very grainy photo of me with some of my first folks in a thing called CBI Academy. For 4 years, I ran an apprenticeship program, 2-year apprenticeship program for junior analysts, people just getting in. And it was a lot of fun. We put 67 people through that program. So I got to watch 67 very different, very unique people struggle and figure out how to find their way, how to find their path, and how to get a good career going. And I'm really proud of some of the people who came out of this too, because now they're senior level people, security officers. One of them is in the insurance agency. Very good group, and gave me a lot of exposure to what it takes to do a good career. So I'm going to talk today about some of the strategies for mental health. I'm going to talk today about how to put it together, and I'm going to end up with a proposal for a career owner's manual, right? What are some of the things you should do weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, on a decade basis? I think that's decadely, I'm not sure. To make sure that you've got a good career and things are going well. So, first off, master the basics. Master the basics. And where I want to start with that is, what is it we actually do? What is it we do in cybersecurity? I got into this field when the movie Hackers came out. If any of you guys remember that movie, you guys probably love that movie. I saw it in the theaters. Shortly thereafter, I had a data center. I tried to skateboard it across the data center like the plague. Fun fact, that is not a good idea to do. They've got raised floors and lips. That's my excuse, not the fact I'm absolutely terrible on a skateboard. But, that idea of like hacking the Gibson and everything really got me excited. And I think fundamentally what we do is we sing to computers, right? We sing the song that computers understand. We're responsible for making sure these machines work and operate and do whatever organizations need to do and keep the bad guys out. If we're on the blue team. If you're on the red team, you sing death metal to the computers and they break down. Interpret that as you will. I'm a blue team kind of guy. Of course, to sing the song to the computers, we have to have good mental health. We have to be sharp. We have to know what we're doing. We have to know the commands that need to be entered. We have to know the syntax. We have to know the connectivity. We have to know the ins and outs of how to secure them. We have to know how to put data into the cloud and everywhere else so things don't break down. We have to know to secure our S3 buckets. Please secure your S3 buckets. And to disable authentication protocols on Azure, please secure your authentication protocols on Azure. And do all those other things, right? We need to know a lot. And so a lot of it focuses in on, I think, these two things. Are we singing to the computer in the right key? And do we have the right amount of mental health to pull this thing off? But behind all of it, of course, and some of the things we oftentimes don't think about, is our physicality. Are we physically fit? Do we have the right state of body, state of health to actually go ahead and run things in our world? And so much of it is focused on that mental health. So much is like, wow, if you just were, calmer, if you just had the right meds, if you just did. But so much of it, I think, overlooks that physicality piece. Are you in a good physical state? Are you rested? Are you fed? Have you gone ahead and done some exercise? And trying to fit all those things in together and have that full context so that we can sing to the machines. So what does it mean to sing to the machines, right? Part of it is obviously knowing what we're doing. And when we don't know what we're doing, you got that whole imposter syndrome. I'll talk more about imposter syndrome in a little bit. but having a good fundamental grasp of what it takes to do the job. And so many great ways to do that. 44Con obviously is one way. So many good conferences, so many good events, books, podcasts. It's just a wealth of information today. When I was first getting into this, I was on the BBSs, if you guys remember the BBSs, and they were fantastic. You get on there and everyone tell you you're terrible and stupid and you don't know what you're doing. And you'd ask one question and they would all dogpile you, but there'd be this one person who go, yeah, but wait a minute, here's a doc and how to do it. You'd be like, yes, I know. And then you log off and change your username. And you'd be like, I know all the things. And someone asks the same question, you're like, you're an idiot. And then you'd ask your question quietly and get dogpiled. And you change I had like 7 different usernames after a couple years. It was crazy. But then it was all about trying to find the information. Today, what's fascinating to me is this about trying to make sure you get the right information. It's really fascinating about how we went almost full circle. If only I had access to all the information, I could do my job. And so you'd try and Google and search, and you end up in a library and doing the Dewey Decimal System and reading left to right. I mean, this is real old days, people. But now I looked at some of my millennials that I was coaching, and it was the exact same thing. They're like, I don't know where to get the information. I'm like, Google it. And they're like, well, I did Google it, and I got 10,000 page results. So which one do I follow? I'm like, I don't know. Ask somebody. He's like, all right, who do I ask? And we kind of come full circle in terms of it used to be we had this information dearth. Now we have information wealth. When we had information dearth, we'd have to talk to people. Now we have information wealth. So we have to talk to people to figure out what to do. So to sing to the machines, first off, we need to have a really good community. And of course, to have good mental health, something we talk about all the time here in the villages and everything else. Are you in a good mental state? Do you have a good mental attitude? A lot of us don't. A lot of us struggle. This is a hard job. It really is. I mean, you look at everything we have to do. Are we doing the right thing? I don't know. Are we appreciated? I don't know. Do we have budget? No. Do we have enough people? No. And so to kind of overcome that negativity can be a very difficult challenge. Especially, again, if you look at online, not the BBSs, but now Twitter. I posted something on Twitter the other day, and it went like so many of my tweets. And actually, it was kind of funny because I posted it on Facebook and I posted it on Twitter. So on Facebook, everyone's like, emoji this, emoji that. On Twitter, they're like, well, yeah, but, and let me explain that to you. It's sort of like this. It's like, I made spaghetti. On Facebook, people are like, we love spaghetti. You're awesome. On Twitter, it's like, I made spaghetti. And people are like, well, why did you do that? Because I was hungry? Did you buy box noodles? Do you know what does to the environment to buy box noodles? I mean, I could just have made my own noodles. Yeah, you should have. I mean, it's just sort of that kind of like everyone, whatever you do is wrong. Or if you made your own noodles, like, well, really, isn't that cultural appropriation to make spaghetti, Wolfgang? You're German. Come on. So we've got this kind of culture that went from IRC to seeming to be nice, and now all of a sudden we brought all these sort of bad habits back to Twitter where we dogpile on people. Very frustrating. So we need a good community, and we need to be supportive of those in our community. On the physical side, we need to have good attention on ourselves. You know, the idea of hackers and body hacking has really come about in the past couple of years, and I love it. I know myself, if I go to the gym in the morning, I feel better all day. If I skip it, I feel terrible. I've been traveling a lot, and I know some of you can travel all the time and hit the gym. I can't. I forget. I'm tired. I'm grouchy. I'm not hitting the gym in the morning. And then it's like 3 weeks go by. I'm like, oh, I feel terrible. I got to hit the gym on Thursday with a good friend of mine, and my lift was down. He's giving me shit. He's like, well, if you would hit it every day. I'm like, I know. Just spot me. I'm sure I can lift this extra weight. But it doesn't only have to be obviously weightlifting. It could be cardio. It could be a number of things. I think one thing we tend to forget is, in singing to the machine and focusing in our brain, the absolute importance it is of realizing that we are animals, right? We're highly functional cavemen, and we need to go out for a walk. We need to go run down a mammoth. We need to do something exciting to get our heart pumping and handle all those chemicals in our body. So, what do we need to do for the basics? We need to have a good balance of everything. We need to make sure on a regular basis we're getting a balance of all our basic needs, right? Sleep and water, food, obviously, good food. I love my not so good food, but keeping some balance in that. Exercise, I already mentioned. Sex is a good one. I'm married to a sex therapist. She's like, you got to talk more about the sex. I'm like, no one wants to hear about the sex. She goes, yeah, but you got to talk about it. I'm like, I'm not going to get on stage and talk about the sex. So if anyone sees her, tell her I did. But your amount of sex is up to you guys. The important thing is that each one of these things is so vital and so critical. And when you skip them, we really quickly run into a hard state, right? We really run into a situation where we're like, everything sucks and I hate everybody and I'm going to yell at someone about spaghetti on Twitter. It's one of those situations where you got to maintain those basics. So as I was lifting and I was telling my friend about this talk, he's like, you need to have a slide that says hypocrite. I'm like, wow, you're right. He's like, no, you don't need to. I'm like, no, I'm going to. Because as I was putting together this deck and thinking about these things, when I opened up PowerPoint, I went, okay, where's my abstract? And I had been traveling a bit. I've been writing a bit. I had this thing about 2 months ago where I was like, I'm sick of all the talks I give all the time. So I know what I'll do. I'm going to submit new talks. And then they all got accepted. And now I got to write 6 new decks for this month. And I'm like, can I just recycle something? And so I couldn't find my abstract for this. And I'm like, here I'm going to be talking about mental health and the importance of not burning out and the importance of getting enough sleep. When I haven't got enough sleep, I took a red-eye flight. I drove up to Toronto. I'm trying to put together this deck in a hotel room at the last minute. And so I actually emailed the 44Con folks. I'm like, hi, funny irony. I'm speaking about burnout. I don't remember what I told you guys I was going to say. It happens to the best of us, right? It really does. And I think the key thing that I tell a lot of the junior folks that I manage is you got to realize that this is part of the gig. We're going to rise. We're going to challenge the situation. We're going to fight off the criminals. We're going to stand on the hill and survey the damage of the red team that's tried to climb our hill, hopefully. We're going to stand on the parapets, and as they put up the ladder, kick them down and go, ha! I patched that server before you got there. We're going to do these things on the blue team. And on the red team, of course, we're going to break in. We're going to find new challenges. We're going to do all this stuff. And then 2 weeks later, we're going to have not slept for a while, right? A month goes by, we're going to be eating like terrible and not exercising. And we're going to burn out. And it's so vitally important, I feel, in this community, in this industry, that when we burn out, we have compassion for ourselves. That we understand that it happens, that we build time in over the duration of our year, of our decade, of our career, to have that burnout, to have that moment where we can just sit back and go, okay, I did this myself, I know what I did, be reflective and figure out what got me into the situation, email the 44Con organizers and hope that they'll graciously give me my abstract, or whatever it is in your field. It's going to happen, and we got to be sure that we're ready for it and that we're compassionate with ourselves. All right, let's talk a little bit about potholes and chipped windows, common things that go wrong. So just to recap, we sing to the computers. And when we sing to the computers, that, of course, requires us to know things, right? It's what we do. We drink and we know things. That's the cybersecurity community. If you don't drink, I'm sorry. That's not indicate that you should drink. If this was Twitter, there'd be 16 people tweeting me right now saying, but we don't drink and you need to be more supportive of people who don't drink. I don't care what you drink. Drink water for all I care. But the point is, we know things. This is what we do. This is our value. Our value is to come in and apply creative, unique solutions. One part of that is, especially if you're transitioning from one career to another or starting your career, is to recognize you don't need to go ahead and recreate everything right away. I love the way that painters learn to paint. I dated an artist once. She was fantastic until she drove me nuts. But it was fantastic watching how she learned. She would go to school and they'd be like, we're going to learn how to paint landscapes. And there'd be 16 landscapes. And she'd pick one and she'd meticulously copy it. And then she'd meticulously, paint a portrait and paint a bowl of fruit or whatever it may be. And she'd copy and she'd copy and she'd copy until she went from copying the overall composition to figuring out what techniques work to create that composition, to copying the individual pieces, to putting those pieces together in a new way, to creating new pieces of art and new compositions. if you were to do that in cybersecurity, a lot of people say, wait a minute, stop, you're copying what someone else did, you're recreating someone else's work. I think it's paramount as we develop our skills to be able to sit back and go, you know what, I'm going to not be innovative for 6 months. I'm going to reproduce some people's work so I can understand it. I saw a great talk at 44Con. I'm going to build that in my lab. I love the CTF. I'm going to follow the CTF how-to, and I'm going to recreate the steps that they did. Those sort of things. So that you can begin to build those skills and then duplicate them and get better and better. I was really into CTFs like 10 years ago now, probably 5-10 years ago. And I built this framework called Batori. And what Batori was a bunch of ways of doing simple things like all the different CTF tricks, right? Pulling things out of a PCAP, doing basic decryption, Caesar shift, and all that sort of stuff. And what I would do is I would take a challenge every week, and I'd try for X amount of time to figure it out. Once I couldn't figure it out, these challenges are on CTF time, by the way, if you want to do this. I'd take the challenge, do it for a week. If I couldn't figure it out, I'd pull down the lesson learned, and I'd reproduce what they did, and then I'd build a script and build my own tool for it, so that when I got to the CTFs, I had a whole toolbox where I could just go, oh, that reminds me of this, and that reminds me of that. No, I think I saw that on this other CTF, and go ahead and do it. And it was a lot of fun. I learned a ton doing that. And I think that type of approach can be very, very valuable, especially when you're starting out or especially when you're switching jobs. It's this concept of practice. Practice makes excellence, right? Malcolm Gladwell popularized it as the 10,000 hour rule. You need 10,000 hours to be great at anything. I really hope that's not the case, because I think like the average tenure of a CISO is like 18 months right now. So no one's ever going to be great at being a CISO. And we all jump around jobs every few years, and the industry's changing everything. I don't know this 10,000 hours, but I do think it is a matter of having a consistent discipline to practice and go ahead and build those skills. And then also knowing how to forget things. I got kind of sad the other day because there was like the top 20 like dead and dying IT skills. And I always pull those up because I got to read them. I'm terrible. So I pulled it up. I'm like, yep, made money off that. Yep, made money off that. Yep, used to love doing that. Yep. Oh, they're all dead. Damn it. Because the minute we know something, it's dead, right? Our skills keep advancing. Our industry keeps advancing. And that's one of the things that makes it fun. So one, anything we learn is going to have a finite lifespan. We just need to deal with that. And two, anything we learn is going to be bound by our memory. There's this idea of 6-week half-life of memory. Whatever I tell you today, 6 weeks, half of it you might remember. Really fascinating when you think about it in terms of your work, your job, your skill set. If I'm doing something every single day, I'm going to remember it no problem. If I take 6 weeks off, I'm going to forget half of it. If I take a quarter off or a year off, I'm going to be so rusty, it's not even funny. And that's really exciting for me as an IT guy because I'm like, I know Active Directory. And someone's like, here, fix this problem. I'm like, that's not Server 2003. What's this PowerShell? And over the course of a career, that can get really hard, right? It's like we're constantly reinventing ourselves every 6 weeks. So what are some of the things we face? Some of the things that chips that may occur in our windshield. Obviously, all the normal stuff. Being disorganized will hit us. Having trouble prioritizing will hit us. Not having good time management will hit us. I mentioned I was putting this deck together just a couple weeks ago, and I was still finishing it up last night. And my wife's like, you always put things off. I'm like, don't rush me, woman. I'm waiting to the last minute on purpose. It's when I'm the best, right? It's when you're the best. We all tell ourselves that. But there's two parts to that. One, obviously, please don't wait to the last minute. I hate when I wait to the last minute. It always drags us down. The other part of it is, so what? I think oftentimes we beat ourselves up because we're like, oh, well, I read this article where super hacker X is up every morning at 4 a.m. and hits the gym and then reads 2 books and then writes his blog article and then recompiles a kernel and sends a patch in and then hits the office at 9. I'm like, holy hell. It's 10 o'clock. I'm just getting out of bed. What is going on? again, I think we need to be compassionate with ourselves. Ultimately, a good career owner's manual is very personal for you because you need to know when you're strong and when you're weak. I used to do a survey every day, and it was just interesting to me. I would ask myself like 6 different performance questions. I was trying to spot some trends in the data. And after a while, I realized it's like I have 2 really awesome weeks. I'm like, yeah, on top of the world. I can do anything. I will volunteer for anything. I'll even sign up for 10 new talks in 1 month. And then 2 weeks where I'm like, I'm doing it. And then 2 weeks where I'm dead. Like my performance just dead. Because I had needed that time, right? And once I realized that, I started building my schedule a little bit more intelligently so I'd have like more quiet weeks on my down weeks. It's knowing that own basis and pulse, productivity pulse of yourself, which will really help you handle those sort of things. A lot of it will come back down to like ADHD, right? People are like, oh, I've got ADHD. I had a guy, one of my academy people, early days in the academy, I think it was my second team. And he comes in, he's all nervous. He's like, can I talk to you? I'm like, yeah, close the door. He closes the door in my office, sits down. He's like, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm like, what is it? How can I help you? He's like, well, I went to the doctor. I'm thinking the guy has like cancer or something, right? The way he's acting. I'm like, this is it. He's done. He's going to tell me he's got to like resign and we got to figure out healthcare. And this is United States, people, so healthcare is a big deal. This is bad. And finally he's like, the doctor tells me I have ADHD. And as a manager, that was my moment to be compassionate. As me, I started laughing. I'm like, so good. He's like, what do you mean good? I'm like, you got a doctor's note to be on my team, bro. You're in the right spot. Because we all have ADHD, or we all have some problem with this, right? If we could handle normal work and normal jobs, we wouldn't have gotten into computer security where everything's crazy. That's why we're here. But it's knowing where our highs and lows are that allows us to build the shock absorbers into our career, into our schedule that allows us to succeed. The next thing I want to talk about real quick is imposter syndrome. This is my favorite graph for imposter syndrome. I'd always give this to my academy people. Like, here's what you think they know because you went to a conference and they're brilliant, and here's what it really looks like because they know a little bit of this and they know a little bit of that, and they're faking a whole bunch of other stuff and everything works. Imposter syndrome is something that we also all face, right? Everyone gets imposter syndrome. It's just a nature of our career. No matter how good I've gotten, no matter how high in the ranks I've been, I've always looked across to my peer and went, man, they're really good. How are they holding it together? That guy's got a budget and everything. Like, I've got a spreadsheet. And he's over there going, man, I got my budget, but how come he's got a business case? Because I know PowerPoint. It's just one of those things, right? No matter how high you get. And I say everyone does imposter syndrome, but don't get imposter syndrome if you don't have imposter syndrome. That's the other side of it. Like, I don't have good enough imposter syndrome. Maybe I'm not in the right field. It's just a nature of our industry. And I think it's good. It is an indicator to me that when you don't have imposter syndrome, that maybe you're in the wrong room. It's one of those things like you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right? You want to get to the room where all the smart people are. If you feel like you really belong, maybe it's time to start looking for a new gig. And also, too, sometimes you are the imposter. That's the other thing, right? Imposter syndrome is a syndrome when you think you're the imposter. I was speaking at a conference, and I landed, and they picked us up from the airport. And here's like the guy who invented PowerShell. Here's like the guy who invented Ruby. There's the guy up front who does a magazine for PHP and does one of the major user groups and conferences for it. 2 people on the side of me are arguing about what it's like. Is it harder to do your second O'Reilly book or your third O'Reilly book? And I'm like, I didn't invent anything. I'm not writing a book right now. What am I doing here? And so we're at the speaker party. I'm hanging out with the guy who was doing the track. It was an OWASP track. And I'm hanging out with the guy who was doing the track. And my story was about this time that a bunch of hackers built a CTF platform. And one of my guys was a secure web coder. Another guy was a pen tester. We had followed an SDLC. It was great. It was brilliant. It went live. And we were hacked within 24 hours. And how we learn lessons from that and how you can apply it to dev. So that was my whole story. My whole story is just like this cute, funny thing that happened on the way to Chicago, you know? It's not like I'm curing cancer and, I just invented Ruby. So I asked the guy, many bottles of wine into the evening, I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here? And he had a little bit of a French accent, and I'm not gonna try, but it was something like, well, Wolf, I don't know you and no one knows you. I'm like, okay, this is a good start. He goes, but you did something with OWASP, and you have lots of followers on Twitter. I'm like, okay. So I really am an imposter. That's great. I felt such a relief at that moment. I'm like, good. It's not syndrome. And when you do feel like that, it was really awesome to me because then I'm like, okay, there's someone I aspire to be, there's someone I aspire to be, there's someone I aspire to be. Where's the gap between where I'm at and where they are, and how am I going to close that gap? And it's a much better conversation to have than me going, should I belong in this room? I don't know if I belong in this room. Do it. Will they find out if I don't belong in this room? I'm like, no, I don't belong. Hi. They chose me because of my Twitter follower count, which really isn't that impressive. This is like the worst vanity metric ever, but I'm going to talk. Really relieving when you actually have imposters, not just the syndrome. So some lessons here. One is embrace the stress. Short-term stress is really good for growth, right? It's the long-term we need to worry about. I'll get back to that. But I think fundamentally, we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable in this industry, in this career, as we're mentoring people. I would oftentimes bring folks in. My favorite story is of a waitress before she joined us. She was a waitress, an associate's degree. She joined my team, and within 2 years, she left to lead compliance for one of the top 5 credit unions in my home state in the United States. And what was phenomenal about her is she was always uncomfortable. Like, you know the Hulk and the Avengers were like, my secret is I'm always angry. You know that moment? That was her. She's like, no, I focused anxiety. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, I'm always anxious. You're always asking me to do this crazy stuff. I always think we can't do it. Right up into the day we do it. And then the customer's happy. And then I take a breath and damn it, Wolf, you asked me to do it again. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Okay, that's good. All right. Focus that anxiety. Keep going. And she used that to really propel her career forward. I think it's so important we get comfortable being uncomfortable. A while back, there was a Earth 2 program. You guys probably heard that, a biome. They've tried to build a biome to simulate what it'd be like to go to Mars. They planted a whole bunch of trees, and they planted these trees in this biome, and the trees kept falling over. They're like, what the hell? Why do our trees keep falling over? There's no reason for these trees to fall over. They're native to this area. Everything should work fine. Why do they keep falling over? They dug into it, and what happened was, dug into it like literally, they looked at the root structure. And because there was not enough wind and stress in the tree, it was not developing a deep enough root system. And therefore, absence of stress, it couldn't stand up on its own. And I think that's a great metaphor for a lot of what we go through. Short-term stress is awesome. Focuses us, gives us adrenaline, gives us excitement, makes this career all worthwhile, and allows us to build deeper roots. So fundamentally, right, we need to consider ourselves, I think, as elite athletes. We need to consider ourselves as mental athletes, folks who sing to computers, folks who push ourselves, train regularly, handle stress like an athlete, and are compassionate with ourselves when we're down and getting our butts whipped, and compassionate with those in the community. And do so in a way that continues to push forward the art and science that is cybersecurity. All right, let's talk a little bit about some traffic problems, things you might run into. Again, we sing to the computers. How do we sing to the computers? No longer alone. We sing to the computers in teams, right? And teams have a lot of different things. They have culture, they have rhythm, they have cadence, they have shared values, they have personalities, they have egos. I recently joined a group, and the CEO reached out to me. He's like, thank you so much for joining our group. We got a lot of big personalities here, a lot of big egos. I'm glad there's room for yours. I'm like, you don't know how big my ego is, bro. No. It's true, though. In our industry, we can kind of have quite a big ego. So part of being in cybersecurity is to ask yourself, is the team positioning us in the right way? Steve Jobs once had this awesome comparison for the early Macintoshes, and he called it, the bicycle. Because his point was, if you plotted out the speed of all mammals, humans were really, really low compared to everything else. Cheetahs, ostriches, everything. And but he put a man on a bicycle, you give him a mechanical advantage, suddenly he's off like a rocket. And so his idea was the computer should be like a bicycle for man's intellect. And I like that analogy. But today, almost everything we do, because of the growing specialization in cybersecurity, is a team sport. So not only do we need the mechanics and the advantage of tool making, but we also need that teamwork and that team to support us. that sense of friendship, that sense of connection, right? That feeling of fam. There is this really cool thing mentally, this in-group bias. It's a cognitive trick. Whatever your in-group is, you love them. If you think about some great teams you've been on, I'm like, I would die for you, bro. I was at a data center and we lost a generator. And that shouldn't have been a bad problem, but the transfer switch didn't work. And that might not have been a bad problem, but the UPS was wired incorrectly. And those three things were a very bad problem. And we blew out UPSs throughout like every single cabinet. And for the next 6 weeks, it was living hell because I was very highly redundant, which was great. But that meant like a firewall seemed fine, but then it would fail. And it would fail over to the other one. And we're like, okay, we hope that one's good. We'll get the other one in place and then flip it back where no one notices. I had a 12-node email cluster. We lost 7 of the nodes. It was a brutal 6 weeks. And towards the end of it, as we're rebuilding it, I had in my office a cot, and I was taking a nap in the cot. And I got off the cot because right around the time it set alarm because some files were moving. The files should have been completed by then. And I got up because the alarm went off. I got a cup of coffee and I looked around. I had one guy sleeping on a beanbag. I had another guy on his computer just like this. I don't know if he was alive or dead. And I'm like, I would go to the mat for these people right now, right? I felt so close to these people. I'm like, these are my brothers in arms. And that is a great feeling. When you're in a team and you face down the mammoth and you triumph, it is just a phenomenal feeling. And I hope we all have that feeling sometime. When you're facing down the mammoth and someone trips you because maybe the mammoth will step on you and not them, that's such a good feeling. When you're in a team where they're not supporting you, not such a good time. When you've got a leader whose values don't match yours, not good at all. So fundamentally, we got to look at 4 different valves, I believe. We got to make sure that our culture fits the company culture. We oftentimes become the average of the people we spend time with. So are we happy with the people in this organization? If we become more like them, are we going to feel good about ourselves, or are we going to feel like we need a shower? You know what I mean? Are our values reflected in theirs? This is one I always ask myself right before I leave a company. Are my values reflected? And do I feel good looking at myself in the mirror every morning because of what I'm doing at this company? Or do I feel like I'm compromising myself, my friendships, my integrity? Are the tasks good? Do we like the songs we get to sing? And is the diversity good? I mentioned earlier my brother in arms because they were all like middle-aged white guys and we loved it. But as I built more teams and had more exposure, I'm like, man, that was not a very diverse team. And I love a good set of diversity because it brings different points of view, different perspectives. And when I was building my academy teams, I was always had an eye for that because the conversations were much better, much richer. I'm a very firm believer that high-performance teams are diverse teams. So these 4 things, we need to make sure all the time those inputs line up with our direction, who we want to be and where we want to go. And what's interesting is lots of companies have lots of different values. And I honestly don't even know that it matters one culture over another, one set of values over another. With exceptions. You know, if it's like, come work for our company and our values are we're going to sell your blood. No, that's not a good value. But with some exceptions, I think what honestly matters is that they become a tool for self-selection. Finding your group where you really feel like you belong, where you can grow, where you can become the person you want to be. Soft skills are hard, right? Everyone's like, it's just a soft skill. Fundamentally, we need to really work on building up teamwork and collaboration skills. It's an area that I focused a ton on when I was mentoring people. It's an area that a lot of us growing up didn't have to worry about because I was the one-man show. When I was at a hospital running IT and IT security for a hospital, I was pretty much it, right? My teamwork was going, hey, Wolf, do you want coffee? I would love coffee. And then I'd go get coffee, and it was great. Communication was phenomenal. We were really all on the same page with me, myself, and I. But you could do that back in the day, right? As long as you know how to network and write some code and stand up some computers, you could do the whole show. Those days are long, long gone. So part of it is building up good teamwork and good collaboration skills. Another thing is making sure we are stronger together. If we're not stronger together, you got to GTFO, right? Get the F out, however you want to say it. But the point is, This is a diagnostic tool. Do I feel in this tribe that I belong here? Do I feel in this tribe that I'm becoming a better person? Do I feel in this tribe maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome that's going to push me forward and make me stronger? Do I feel like I'm running with a pack that's going to help me become more competitive? If not, we need to select a different team. All right, let's talk a little bit about road feel, right? Driving value, delivering some skills. There's always a risk of feeling disconnected. If you're plugged in and you're feeling good, you're going to get recognition, right? You have a sense of respect. You have a sense of status around the work you do. You're proud of the work you do. I think we've all had times in our careers we've been performing what we thought was peak value, and our boss is like, why did you do that task? It doesn't matter. Or they're like, oh yeah, we really support Jane over here because she is awesome. And, John, well, okay, keep patching servers. They're like, but I just patched everything and we avoided what took down Equifax. And they're like, yeah, okay, that's lovely. I'm glad you patched the server. I reported to a CFO one day, and I remember walking to his office. I was all proud. I'm like, because I just heard about risk management. And I'm like, all right, as a security officer, this is great. We're going to take a risk-based approach. I'm going to start doing risk management. And he looked at me. He's like, Wolf, we trade on Wall Street. I got an entire floor of PhDs above you doing risk management across stocks worldwide. What are you talking about? Like, mental note, don't talk about risk management. I am talking about security. He's like, yeah, good. Just keep things running. Is everything up? Okay, good. This has been a great meeting. I'm like, damn it. We need to make sure that we're actually plugged in, right? And we need to make sure, too, that we're able to stand out from the crowd. And the fundamental question is how will you stand out? And part of that is finding the tasks that only you do well. I think if you look at people who are top of their field, they're doing something that only they can do and contributing value that only they have. It is very difficult to get to this point, but it's a matter of regularly asking yourself, am I doing something in this team, adding value that can be replaced by any of my other teammates, or am I contributing unique value? Am I doing something that only I can do because I'm wired for it, because I love it, because I got the skills in it, because I got the background in it, because I know my productivity pulse and it fits the way I work? Or am I just like 70 other people? And trying to gauge that and make that distinction is an ongoing effort. There's a lot of tasks that need to be done. This is a CISO mind map, and was it from Dow Security? And I used to use this when I was doing CISO coaching. I'm like, all right, here you go. Here's what you need to do. It's all simple. Just do that stuff. And they go, I have no idea. I have no way to do all that stuff. You can't do all that? You don't have time? No, I got like 60 hours in a week maximum. All right, let's step back and let's figure out a different way to do this. And one of the things we talk about is how do we take the tasks in this, to figure out what tasks that, if I'm talking to a CISO, what tasks the CISO is really good at and they love. So start with the tasks you love. I'm a big fan of outsourcing boring. If you don't love it, don't do it. Delegate it. Figure someone else to partner with it on. B, what tasks on this actually line up with what the team's mission is and what the corporation's mission is. At my own position, we used to talk about this in terms of rocks. You guys have probably heard this analogy, right? You put the sand in first, and then you put the rocks in, then you can't fill up the whole jar, rocks being your big priority. So you put the rocks in first, and then you can fit more stuff in, you can get more tasks done. It's great, sounds motivational, it's exciting. This is the way that my old team used to do it, by quarterly rocks. You may have quarterly goals, you may have quarterly OKRs. It doesn't matter. In your corporation, there's someone who can say, here's the top 5 things my company's doing right now. And you're like, awesome. And then go back and go, okay, based on those top 5 things, what do these line up? And how do these things tell that story that we're supporting those top 5 things? Or 3 things, or 2 things, or whatever it may be. Tying those threads between what really matters to the corporation to what we're doing. And tying those threads to what we're really good at to what we're doing allows you to create a job description that's really distinct and supports your unique advantages. Right? So ultimately, we want to build a team and build yourself so that you're doing your tasks that support the company goals, support the team goals, and position you to have a better career in the long term. And to put it in a different way, we need to align your values with your verbs. right? What does I do? What do I care about? And how do those things come together? And how does that position me to be different and unique in the organization, the community, and to give back? Get one more sip of water. I'm getting parched. So we're going to talk about worn tires. Rebalance every 10,000 kilometers, of course, is a nod to tires, where if you don't rebalance your tires, you end up wearing them wrong. You end up wearing them out. You end up causing problems for how you drive. So what are some of those things that would build up over time and cause problems? One is, I talked about embrace the stress, but what about embrace the stop? Short-term stress is awesome. This is exciting. We've got a deadline. We've got a big production coming. We've got a big software release coming. We've got a compliance audit coming. I know a lot of people are like, oh, compliance audit, not that exciting. Listen to me. Sorry. If I give anyone like trigger warnings, I should have given it right before I said compliance. But we got something coming. We're going to do it. We're going to do the thing. We're going to get the team together and we're going to make it happen. It's exciting. Short-term stress is great. Long-term stress is killer. Long-term stress is, I think, and I'd posit, why in cybersecurity we're not often strategic, right? We're very much, here's the thing we're fixing and here's the thing we're fixing right now because this is what we can do right now. Short-term stress, awesome. Long-term stress depletes us. It focuses us to the point of being unable to be creative. It focuses us to the point of being unable to learn. Short-term or long-term stress is one of the things that oftentimes will sap someone over the long duration of your career because you're no longer able to absorb information. Going back to that half-life of memory, 6 weeks, that means 6 weeks goes by of stress. I haven't absorbed anything. I'm already starting to lose and fall further behind people who are more rested, more able to learn, and more able to ingest. I told you about the trees in the dome. Another experiment was done in the 60s. All really interesting psychological studies were done in the 60s. I'm sure of that. I say that, and my wife would tell me, she's a therapist. She'll go, yeah, because they didn't have like any ethical rules back then. I'm like, all right, sure. But they like gave college kids LSD and that was a study and that was cool. She's like, and then we go back and forth on this. But one of the studies that was done in the 60s was done with cute little animals, cute little fuzzy animals. They put them in a warm space. They put them, gave them enough water, gave them enough food, bedding, lovely little cute little animal. And then they stressed it out with strobing lights. That's all they did. Everything was fine. This animal should have been absolutely okay. It was stressed out with strobing lights, which would prevent it from sleeping and leave it in a stressed state. And they were actually able to sicken, weaken, and in some cases kill animals from just prolonged stress from a light. So what happens if we're in a SOC, getting ticket after ticket after ticket after ticket after ticket, and seeing on the big boards, so-and-so hacked, so-and-so also hacked, you're not keeping up, and seeing the news feeds from other pundits going, well, security people will clearly have their head in the sand, right? That's our strobe light. It's terrible. So long-term stress can get us. We need not only embrace the stress short-term, but we need to embrace the stop longer-term. Right? It's okay to become depleted over the course of the day, but if that is like your quarter, we're in a really bad spot. And we need to know, A, how to put our phone in airplane mode so that we don't run out of the battery, and B, what it is that ultimately recharges us. What is it that will charge up ourselves, our careers, energize us, and get us back in the game? And C, we need to know the warning lights, the things that are actually causing us to drain our batteries. Here's some warning lights and some things that you should do. Physiological effects. I gained a ton of weight before I burned out. I'm a little bit heavy at the moment now. Don't pick on me. I know I am. You can pick on me. It's okay. But I got 40 pounds in 6 months because I was in this stress job and I was building the SOC and I was driving myself into the ground, right? Physiological effects like that. Having to go to the doctors all the time. Stress-related injuries. Those sort of things. We need to balance our lives or GTFO. Non-competitive compensation. They're not paying us enough. We need to get a raise or GTFO. If you stay, as an industry, if a bunch of us continue to keep non-competitive compensation, our employers, of course, are going to continue to not pay us competitively. Lack of training. If the position you're in doesn't provide training opportunities, downtime for training, budget for training, those sort of things, you need to either make your own time by setting your schedule and negotiating that with your leader and your team, or GTFO. Lack of a career path. If your career path is, yeah, I hope you stay, that's not a career path. And that may be because there isn't a career path in your organization. That's a conversation with your leader. Or it may be because your career path is ultimately going to take you to another organization. So in which case you need to level up and then GTFO. Poor teamwork. I mentioned this earlier. If your team's not supporting you, if you don't gel with your team, if your team's not driving you, if you don't feel like your team is a little bit better than you, can you get some training? There's plenty of books out there. To work better with others. I think soft skills is an area where we can all improve on. And if you still do that and you're still in problems, GTFO. Poor leadership. Maybe it's a matter of emotional intelligence. Maybe it's a matter of dealing with your boss better. Every time I have not liked my leader, I have left very quickly because they define your tasks. They define where you're going. I mean, if you're not getting along with your leader, you either make it work or GTFO. Similarly, if there's no appreciation or recognition for what you're doing, if you can't tie your tasks to what you're good at and what only you can uniquely do, and tie those tasks to what the company's rocks, quarterly goals, OKRs are, and what you're achieving, then you're not going to get that appreciation and recognition. Either reset your expectations about what your job is or GTFO. Misaligned values. I had a client, and he came to me and he's like, what are we doing this for? This isn't working. I'm like, it's not working. We need to pull the plug. He's like, I have this other company that can do the work. I trust them. They're already in here. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to hurt your career. I've known you for 10 years. You need to, work with this other company. He's like, all right, glad we talked. I went back to my leadership. I'm like, look, values are we do what's right for the customer. What's right for the customer is we walk away from the deal. They're like, oh no, we can't do that. We lose money. But we're entering this relationship. We can't deliver. We don't have the people. We don't have the skills. But we got to make it work because we can't lose the money. Okay. All right. Good. GTFO. Right? Fundamentally, these are your warning lights. And I think it's very important we look for these warning lights regularly. It's very easy as our battery is dying to overlook them. It's very easy to take the teenager approach to your car and say, okay, yeah, I got a warning light. I'll just tape over it. It's cool. I keep driving. I didn't really need my brakes. I was doing consulting work. I didn't have much money, and I literally had tape over one of my warning lights, and my brakes went out in rush hour, and I had to drive home with the emergency brake. Short-term stress is great. I never, again, ignored a warning light. Wow, was that scary. So you need to make sure you're looking at those and taking care of it. Bottom line, you need to protect yourself, right? Your greatest career asset is you, and only you can know what works well for you, how you work, and where you need to go. And you need to make sure that you're taking care of that over the longer term. We're going to give you a couple tools for that, and then give you the Career Owner's Guide, and we'll call it a day. So, some tools. 1, 2, 3, relax, recharge, and relearn. On the relax side, it's all about de-stressing, taking care of the basics, doing what is good for you in a toolbox. I would oftentimes sit down with my academy team and say, all right, how do you relax? What is working for you? I learned the term retail therapy from one of the ladies who worked for me. I'm like, I've never felt relaxed spending money, but if that works for you, that's awesome. I like massages. I'm a big fan of massage. I get a massage every month, every couple of weeks when things are really tight. Meditation works. Obviously, therapy works. If you're in therapy, I hear it's wonderful. My wife's a therapist. She's very pro-therapy. If that works for you, do that. Taking down days. I'm going to come back to this idea of down days in a minute. And then taking time away, right? Making sure you actually take that PTO. In America, we're terrible at this. I don't know, maybe you guys are much better at, more enlightened. You can tell me after this talk. But we oftentimes like, I didn't take PTO for 2 years. I am awesome. Okay. How are you doing? I'm fine. I'm fine. What's your risk appetite, bourbon? Okay. It's all good. In hiking, there's this concept called 0 days. And in hackers, there's this concept called 0 days. So oftentimes I would say something like, we had this conversation, I'm like, I'd take a 0 day. And they're like, okay. And in their mind, they're like, all right, so I need to write an exploit. And maybe if I give it to Apple, I get $1 million. And that would definitely help my mental health. In hiking, there's this idea that if you're going to do a long distance, for example, the Appalachian Trail is about a 6-month total hike. I've been hiking it in sections since I was 18. And if you're going to go the long distance, you need to have a down day so you can recharge. A 0 day is no miles on the trail. 0 day is, you know what, I went far enough. I've got enough food in my pack, enough water in my pack. I'm going to sit, rest, recharge, and do it again. We need, I believe, to apply that to InfoSec so that when we reach that peak, we're like, a day off would be really good. It'll help me recharge, get my head back into the game, then I can learn and handle these problems. We need to take those 0 days. Then, on the charge side, what energizes you? Hacker conferences. I love going to these things. They come back going, I got 1 million what ideas. I can build it on my lab. It'll be great. 6 weeks later, I'm a rock. But it happens. Action movies work for me too. I love the Mission Impossible movies. They're brainless, but I put them onto the plane and I land that plane and I had the MI6, music and my earphones as I'm walking off the plane. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this. They're like, Wolf, it's a spreadsheet. I'm like, yes, but I'm gonna, and you go on those things. And then as we have this cadence, also know how you can relearn, right? What does it take to get your head in the game to do those sort of things? I did, several years ago, burn out really hard. I built a SOC. I built a red team. I built a managed service provider that was doing monitoring and vulnerability management. And I built it all in a very short period of time. And in about a year and a half, I just ran myself into the ground. And I actually took about 3 months off. And it was great. Not everyone can take 3 months off. I get that, but it was so awesome because I'd wake up, I'd hit the gym, I'd go swimming, I'd take a nap. Naps are awesome. Pro naps. I don't mean to brag, but I have great staying power for naps. I'm always up for a nap. I can go for a long time. And then I would go and hang out with some of my friends, right? So I'd added all these things in, and then I would study a little bit in the evening, go to bed, do it again. And man, after those 3 months, I was ready to take on the world because I brought all these elements together and recharged myself. So what does this look as a owner's manual? One thing, I keep talking about GTFO, right? It beats coping because it frees you up to do something that you can really excel at, something that really fits you. I'm not suggesting we always quit, but I am suggesting that as an industry, we need to make sure that we draw a clear line of what we will do and what we won't do, and hold to that line, both for our own sanity, our own growth, as well as for everyone else in this room. Because the minute an organization is like, I can take advantage of these people, then we all get brought down, right? Salary gets brought down, all the flexibility we have gets brought down. But don't quit over short-term issues, right? Short-term is good. Short-term is awesome. It's not fun. It hurts. It's scary, but it builds character. It helps you grow. It's the longer term that you need to work for. So it's balancing those two. When do I need to do, check my engine, or when do I just need to add some oil? And knowing where to draw those lines. And I think fundamentally only you can draw those lines for yourself. What do you do over the longer term? So weekly, the basics, I already talked about this. Eat well, prepare for the week ahead, do all the things. Make sure there's time in your schedule to de-stress, and make sure there's time in your schedule somewhere in there that pumps you up and energizes you. And then do a weekly review. Sort of like Scrum, sort of like Agile. Do sprints, do cycles. If you look at my calendar, it's like 2 days of meeting with people because that energizes me. 2 days of doing deep work where I'm just focusing and I'm doing the things. And then 1 day where I'm like, man, I'm toast. I'm catching up an email. Expense reports are a thing. On a monthly basis, you're doing all those things, but review the stress. Keep track of it. Was it a short-term stressor, or have I been now stressed for 2 months? What's going on? Check your warning lights. Check for those things and make sure you're noting them when they happen. And then schedule your 0 days. What day in your month or a couple days are you doing a downtime where you're giving yourself a breather to catch up on tasks? The hiker version, of course, not the hacker version. Quarterly, check your health. Make sure you're still in good shape. Everything's going well. Review your accomplishment plan. Here's what I'm doing. Keep a brag journal. Here's all the awesome things I've accomplished so that you can review them with folks as needed. Review your learning. Remember, anything that you learned this quarter, if you're not still applying, you're going to forget in a few weeks. So review your learning and figure out what you're going to do. And ask yourself, is your work being recognized? And are your values being supported or subvertive? Do you feel good still? Are you excited? Or are things creeping up? Annually, job reviews. We all have them. But how often do we review our employers? I think it's so vital we sit down with ourselves, definitely, with a peer, preferably, with a leader, ideally, and say, okay, how How am I feeling about this job? Where am I going? Where's this taking me? Let me review the company and the position. If I had to apply for this again, would I apply for it right now? Does it support your long-term career path? Where's the teamwork taking you? Where does management leave you? And decadely, I don't know, routinely, every few years, ask yourself, where are you now? Right? When I was 25 years ago, my career goals were a lot different than they are today. And every few years, I'm constantly stepping back and going, where should I go next? Where is the market going? Where is my passions going? What do I used to be really excited about? And what do I not care about anymore? I could care less about writing code. And I think 20-year-old me would not believe that. So, with that, the point is, make sure you got the right tools in your toolbox. Make sure you're doing regular maintenance on yourself and your career. I hope these have given you some ideas on how to go about doing those sort of things. Fundamentally, this is a fantastic industry to be in. It's a fantastic community to be a part of. I'm always excited to do it, and yet I watch so many of us struggle and burn out and deal with imposter syndrome and deal with all these issues. So I hope I've given you some ideas on how to handle them. If not, hit me up afterwards or go see the 44Con Mental Health Hackers Village up top. Thank you very much.